It is early. It's what, 6:22 on a Monday, 500 feet above the streets of New York City on a very somber day. Simply put, this day continues to suck all over. I would say all over the world, especially all over the United States, and of course, you feel it here in New York City. 9/11. 22 years ago today. I can't believe it's been 22 years. It's just unbelievable. With that, let's say hi to a few people. Richie Rich, morning, who the man? Well, I'm not the man, Richie Rich. You are not the man. Honestly, because of 9/11 today, Rudy Giuliani might be the man. I know his life has been turned upside down, but when you think of 9/11, you certainly think of Rudy Giuliani. He definitely was a decent leader and got us through a lot of crap back in the day. Cheers to all the victims of 9/11 and their families today. My God. They continue reading the names every year. You know, the crowds are dwindling. There's less attention put on it. But every single year, they read the names. Not sure if it's still on TV. I'm sure somebody on TV, I'm sure our local station still covers the reading of the names of the victims of 9/11. You can just kind of feel the sorrow in the air on this day. The towers were right through this fog, a mere few miles down. I don't know how many, less than 5 miles from here. But there you go. Building 7. What about? I don't do the conspiracy stuff. I'm sorry, Ross Dogs. I'm sorry. Whatever. I don't do the conspiracies. Cheers to the victims of 9/11. Clinton had 5 chances to kill UBL. It would have never happened. Oh boy. Leslie Larson, good morning, open everyone. How are you? Well, the weird thing about the Osama, I actually go back to 93. The first time they were trying to take down the towers, and oh, my alarm's going off. Oh yeah, that's hilarious. I never sleep to my alarm. But I go all the way back to 93. My dad was having quadruple bypass surgery in New Haven, Connecticut at the VA hospital when the 93 one hit. And I remember like it was yesterday, just being in that hospital room while he was recovering, watching the coverage on TV. They tried in 93. And then, of course, 8 years later, they succeeded. People forget about the 93 incident. And that was a biggie. Man. But they didn't get the job done. And then they come back eight years later and they get the job. That's just crazy. Mike O'Donnell, hate this day. Yeah, I feel very somber. I mean, we were in it back then. I mean, we had a massive radio show. And I don't know. I don't know what to say. I've said it. I've said it all over the years. But look, I'll say the one thing that I think I want to say every year: the smell of burning plastic and flesh. I will never forget. I will never forget that. And that was, I think, 2 days later, because we were living on Long Island. 9/11 happened. Obviously the radio station at the time, we were at WNEW. We weren't syndicated yet. We were just a New York based show. And they're like, we found a studio for you guys in Garden City. So you guys could go there and do your show we did a show on 9/11. Can you imagine? And that was the day we met Sean Hannity, because he couldn't get into the city either. And we were all broadcasting from a radio station in Garden City. It was the old LIR, DRE or something like that, I think. I'm trying to remember, but they had a little building with a bunch of studios, and they were kind enough to give us their space for the day. And I just remember taking calls from like people that lost loved ones in the tower. It was just crazy. And I think in a lot of ways, 9/11 changed the directory of the Opie and Anthony Show. I think before that we were very we were more of like a very just kind of fun, silly, taking the piss out of everything type of radio show. We certainly dipped into politics, but after 9/11, you couldn't ignore politics anymore. And I think that was the turning point where we went more and more into the political arena. And without getting into all the garbage that happened as the years went on, but I think that was definitely like a crossroads for the old Opie and Anthony Show, 9/11. Then I think it was the next day coming in. I remember I would take the Long Island Railroad into New York City. I would take it from Oyster Bay, Long Island. And I remember as we were approaching, I want to say Jamaica Station. When you approach Jamaica Station, I'm trying to remember, this is for the local people. You get a decent shot of New York City at this point. And I remember the whole tower area was still burning. I mean, a lot. And you could hear, I know that I hate when people say this, but it is the God's honest truth. You could hear a pin drop on the Long Island Railroad, which was unheard of because people just had to babble. Half of us were on those trains back in the day. We just wanted to sleep. We just wanted our heads up against the hard window. There was no way of resting your head nicely. And you always had people just babbling. But that day, no one was babbling and everyone was looking out that window. And it was just very sad, to be honest with you. And then the radio company put me up in a hotel in New York. And after the show on, I guess that would be September 12th, I remember just walking around the area. I just did a tour of that area. It's on my YouTube and my Facebook, where I went back to my old stomping grounds. And I pointed out the old building where the Opie and Anthony Show was while we were at WIDW. I stopped into the Brooklyn Diner, which we ate at 3-4 days a week easily. Then walked through the lobby of the building and basically got kicked out. And then it ended with some movie trivia. But that video is up now on my YouTube and my Facebook. But I was staying in that hotel that I showed on that video. And like I said, you would just smell like burning plastic and definitely the smell of flesh all the way up on 57th Street. But then I also remember our show ended at 7. I had no desire to sleep, so I remember just walking around the area a little bit, maybe trying to find maybe a beer or some dinner. And I remember, there were a lot of people that were just going through their normal lives, like young people that were done with work for the day, and they were just chatting away as they were going to meet friends for drinks or dinner. And it felt like some of these people, 9/11 isn't going to stop me. But I'm thinking to myself at the time, it's only September 12th, and you guys are already babbling and going about your lives. But that definitely wasn't the majority of what was going on that day. Most people would just look at every single human being, and there was an acknowledgement of like, holy crap, we went through something, and we're going to be going through this for a very, very long time. You were acknowledging your fellow human beings big time, in a good way. Like people you would almost want to push into the gutter as you were walking the streets of New York. All of a sudden there was an understanding between almost every single New Yorker for a while. You reckon you would have jumped out of the building and hoped for the best, Hope, or rather go through the fire? It's a S show either way. They chose to jump. That I'll never forget. They chose to jump. They weren't trying to end their lives. They were hoping for a miracle, but that's how bad it was up there that their decisions were, well, my best decision is to jump. Can you even imagine? And they jumped one after another. I mean, I can really get into some all the details at this point. I would imagine all the details. Like even the weather knows. Even the weather knows on 9/11, let's make it yucky. Although on 9/11, it was one of the most glorious days ever. Blue skies, beautiful, no clouds, perfect temperature. But now, like the anniversary, this is the weather that should be around New York City on 9/11. Absolutely. So a lot of people could like just reflect on this day. Ted Palawada knows the smell still haunts me. Oh God, yeah. It comes back like that. That's my first thought on 9/11 every year. That's my first thought. And then I don't know if I was lucky enough or whatever, but well, I could say because he's now like retired and has moved on. But Keith the Cop got me down to 9/11. A mere couple days after the fact. I almost want to think. I almost think it was the next day, but probably not. A few days later. And I remember like the electricity was off down there, except for like makeshift lights. There was rubble everywhere because the towers came down on the West Side Highway, so there was no real road around there for a little bit. So they made these makeshift roads through like the rubble. I remember like the cop car was really just bouncing, and I got to the actual ground zero site a couple days. 2-3 days later, maybe a little longer, but it was just, the sight of firemen with a hose this hose looked like it was a quarter mile long, and they were on the main pile. The main pile had to have gone up at least 10 stories. That was the pile of rubble. At least. It was probably even more. And they were just hosing the whole thing. And you would hear people yelling for people and stuff like that. They still were holding out hope that a miracle would happen and they would find some people. But, man. And then, like I told you, for whatever reason, there was another building that got shaved by the rubble. So it looked like a honeycomb. The whole side of the building was gone. And for whatever reason, they were sweeping. It looked like they were sweeping, but who knows? They were just pushing stuff out of these offices for whatever reason. I have no idea now. And you would watch like full desks and filing cabinets and chairs just falling all the way down to the ground. Like you would watch the stuff fall like 20 stories out of this building. I guess I'm glad I went, but man. And what you said on that day that year, you said people are going to forget, and sure as they have. Oh, well, eventually, what we liked, I think me and Anthony were on the same page that day for sure. And moving forward for a while. And what I liked about it was that everyone came together because of this horrendous tragedy, excuse me. And everyone was on the same page for a while, and it felt good. Everyone had their little American flags that were on their cars or whatnot. And sure enough, within a week, 2 weeks, everybody went back to yelling and screaming at each other. But when these huge over-the-top tragedies happen, think the Maui fires recently, think the hurricane down there in Florida recently, people really come together. And they don't give a crap about, politics as much. Oh, you're a Biden person or you're a Trump person. Like, if God forbid, if this happened now, you wouldn't give a crap that person's into Biden or that person's into Trump. People would absolutely come together. But unfortunately, for a very short period of time. Didn't you do the show at IRA? Yeah, I went over that. They, they locked down New York City. So I was living on Long Island. Anthony was living on Long Island. That was the candle house for him. And we couldn't get in the city because it was locked down. But the company, God bless them. They're like, wow, we really need you guys on the air. I mean, radio at that point gives a crap, to be honest. But they want us on the air. We definitely wanted to go on the air. And they made some calls, and they figured out that we could go to, I guess it was LIR. I think they changed the name to DRE at that point in Garden City. Yeah. Oh, thanks for playing Metallica, Don't Tread on Me. It was downtown that day. Frank Castle. You remember that? Yeah, we picked Don't Tread on Me, and that was like just like everybody's just feeling And we said, screw this. And we cranked Metallica. And that song that day, I'm with you, Frank. Thanks. Just got people just motivated to do something in our little world, you know. It was burning for a month afterwards. Oh, yeah. No, I was trying to remember how long, Ted. Yeah, there was smoke coming from that thing for a very, very long time. You're saying about a month? That could be about right. It was an interesting feeling in New York City for a few weeks. Everyone you came into contact with knew someone that died. Yeah, man. And I said it like, I think it was the next day, because then I was able to get to the city and do my whole train thing. And I remember like seeing just cars. Look, I don't know how true this is, and I've said this over the years, but I remember driving by the train station for whatever reason late at night. Oh, I was probably driving home from, I don't know, whatever. But very shortly after 9/11, I was driving past the train station on Long Island that I took every morning, and I saw tons of cars, not late at night in this parking lot. I'm like, that's weird. How many of these people, you know, were in the towers on 9/11, and that's just their cars just sitting there in the you know, excuse me, at the train station. I remember that too, and it was unusual because I would pass, or I would park in that lot to go into the city, and I knew that there was way too many. I'm like, wait, are these cars of people that are never coming home again? I remember that thought too. Sure, Jester. It was an interesting feeling in New York City for a few weeks. Everyone you came into contact with. Oh, okay, yes. Sorry about that. We read yours. Yes. We'll never forget. Well, yeah, man. I think this is a hard one to forget 22 years later. And I'm like, it feels like, you know, it feels way more recent than 22 years later. RJ Henners drove into Midtown that morning. Remember listening to the show that afternoon in my office. Was stuck in the city till 10 p.m. as the tunnels were closed and the GWB kept getting shut down due to dozens of threats. Yes. Yeah, I remember that, because then you were like, is this it? Is this the end of this? Remember that? Then you would hear false news. Not worth getting into now, but you would hear false news. And now, you know, with the luxury of time, we know that was all BS at the time. But these false news and rumors would start. You're like, oh, my God, this isn't the end of this, is it? Chris, I remember those shows O&A did those days following. Had to be hard for you, but it was so good to be able to listen to you guys in such a chaotic time. Added just a bit of normalcy. I didn't think it was hard for us, to be honest, knowing like what happened to a lot of families that day. We were just doing our jobs, man, and we had such a bond with New York City and our listeners back then that it was. I can't imagine not doing it, to be honest. That's exactly what I wanted to do that day. I mean, exactly. Back when Keith, the cop, I've never really mentioned his name, but most people have figured it was Keith the cop. He's like, I could bring you down to ground zero. I'm like, hell yeah, I did want to see it. And I had to put on some kind of NYPD, like, I don't know, like kind of a windbreaker. So it looked like I was sort of official. And he's basically, he got down there and he basically said, you know, stay close to me. And we wandered around. Yeah, that absolutely happened. Keith also called me when Building 7 was falling. He's like, are you watching the TV? We were all watching the coverage. And he called me in a panic. Keith has to remember this. He was probably calling anybody. And like they knew there was something happening down there with I believe it was now Building 7. And he's like, they're saying it's going to fall. They're saying, what are they saying on TV? He was panicking. And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't have any real good info for him. And then he was like literally running as he was talking to me. And then I guess he hung up. I remember the complete details of how that ended. And then I'm sure he was calling other people just trying to get knowledge because he was in the middle of it. And obviously there was some more crap going on down there. And he wanted to make sure he was safe. Hey, Hope, I, like most folks, will remember where we were when the attack happened. My heart goes out to all those who lost loved ones that day. Excuse me. You destroyed the loose change guy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got cornered by conspiracy guys on the streets of New York. So thank you, Royalty. I greatly appreciate that, man. You want to be put in timeout? It'd be an honor. Okay, Craig, I'll do that. You're in timeout. It would be an honor. Jesus. That's funny. Besides the obvious, though, I hope everyone's doing all right. We'll just let's just get through 9/11. It's just, every year. It's just like it's just in the air here in New York. And it's hard to believe, like, I mean, if you're 30 years old, you're only 8 years old when this damn thing happened. So there are so many people out there right now that they're not really connected to this thing as much anymore. I mean, if you're 22 years old, you were just a newborn. That's crazy to me. Absolutely nuts. But man, if you're 30, you were 8 at the time. That's it. What's that? Second grade? Something like that. That's crazy. You think Jim would have tried to get a picture with bin Laden? 100%. I'm not, this is not even a gag. 100%. 100. Could you tell me when you're, oh, well, we never really, anyway. Oh, the other thing about 9/11, which I find kind of fascinating. So at the time, we didn't know who was responsible and all that. And eventually we realized it was Osama bin Laden was behind the whole thing, right? And then you fast forward, I don't know, a mere probably, when did they get Osama? I'm trying to remember. Was that like, what year did we get Osama bin Laden? And then and then all of a sudden, the guy that took out Osama bin Laden, it's on our radio show, and it's almost like the whole thing came full circle for us anyway. Fast forward, a whole bunch of years. Next thing you know, the guy who took him out is on our radio show, and it obviously brought us back to 9/11, talking to this guy, and then he turns out to be damn cool. Robert O'Neill. Look, I don't know if I line up with him politically on everything, but who gives a crap? That's the problem we make in America. For ourselves. If you don't line up with someone 100% politically, you don't want to be dealing with those people. That's not how it should be in America. But with that said, I had Robert O'Neill on the radio show. I had Robert O'Neill on the podcast, I think twice, and may have had some drinks with him another time. Robert O'Neill is a very cool dude. I like him a lot. Bad songs for 9/11 tributes. I'll start with Burning Down the House by Talking Heads. Oh my God. One of the best things that did happen because of 9/11 was all the bad song parodies. Everyone thought they could make. I think they were trying to make a buck, obviously. So they were writing their just terrible songs and song parodies about 9/11. And geez. Okay. And boy, did we have fun beating the crap out of those people and their stupid songs. Does anybody remember that? And I mean, the pile would come in like this, and we would play, a few every day, and they were just god awful. Oh, that made us kind of laugh. Do they teach kids about 9/11 in U.S. schools, or do you as parents tell your kids about it? This is a very good question. One of my kids is in a bathroom right there, but they're aware, but we don't really talk about it much for the simple reason is because we live 500 feet above the streets of New York. So we're in this, kids have fears. They have a lot of fears in their little heads. And so we don't have major discussions about it, but they're absolutely aware. And I'm sure they'll be learning about it today in school some more. But for many, many years, we avoided the subject for the simple reason, especially when they were younger. My kids are now 13 and almost 11 especially because of how we live. I'm like, their little brains are going to be like scared crapless when they go to bed at night. So we sort of avoided it in general, except for broad strokes. I was barely 21. What's up, Minash? Sitting in a bar here in South Africa watching CNN. I was drinking beer with a hot college ass on my lap. Only one part of this story is true. Jesus. How did it play in South Africa there, Minash? How did it play? How did it play around the world? There were a lot of countries that were certainly cheering on 9/11. They were happy that we finally got ours. Oh my God, there's some animals in this world. My thoughts go out to the victims and their families today. As you can see, God is like, New York, this is your weather today. Never forget, here's your weather. Just feels yucky in New York today. And then tomorrow, like that, we'll be back to kind of doing our thing, I guess. But today is always just, I don't care. It's been 22 years. I don't care that a lot of the people on those streets in New York have no real connection anymore. In 22 years, a lot of people move out of this city. A lot of people have been born. A lot of people are just not old enough to really have that legit connection to 9/11. They know it through the history books, I guess, at this point. But for me and older people that were here on 9/11, yeah, this day still sucks pretty bad. Never forget, people. Never forget.